It's even way faster to go down than on the way going upwards.
I work 18 hours a day, 16 hours a day.
We're all about these collective shadows.
You're not able to track it, you're not able to grow.
I think the lowest hanging fruit or start is always with sleep.
I would love for you to bring this to the audience.
The challenge was to tell what's coming to my mind. I mean, that's what came immediately to my mind. Say it works 80% of the time, majority of the time.
What will be your advice, but is not able to do it, right? Strong denial or defense to the whole concept of mental well-being. Or David.
Oh, now that's the most difficult one.
Like that. I really like that. Okay. Today I have someone with me who has worked with Fortune 500, has been 10 years in kickboxing, doing championship across internationally, and more so has been working with Mindvalley as well. Right now he's going through a very strong transition in his life, and what got me most excited to bring him on the show and ask him to come and talk about someone doesn't need mental well-being to really have high level of performance. Is that even true? So welcome on the show, David Szécsei, and I'm super excited to break myths and barrier with you today. How are you feeling?
I'm very excited, glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Now, I think let's just directly talk about mental well-being and what it has to do with performance. It doesn't really play a role?
No, it's very important. Many people think that these are two opposites in these worlds, right? You know, you either choose high performance and you pay with the price of mental well-being, or you choose mental well-being, a balanced life or happiness, but it comes on the cost of performance, right? So this is very important notion to make, that actually these two can work hands in hands together. If we have a right plan, we have a right strategy, right? This is something what's coming from my experiences from being an athlete, which is a highly competitive environment, such as so that your mental well-being is actually way more important than like in the corporate world, because we do spend less time during the competition or even less time with training, but it's significantly more intense, which means that your recovery is crucial, right? But if you work in corporate jobs, let's say 40, 50, 60 hours or even more,
Absolutely.
or even entrepreneurship, the challenge is that the level of intensity is not necessarily as high as an athlete. Many people are surprised and say, oh my God, how is it possible to have it even higher, right? But then you learn that the load of stress, both physical and mental, you experience during fighting is so high that actually it's mandatory for you to have the right recovery strategies implemented. Otherwise, you just can't last long, right? So this is an idea which I kind of brought into the corporate life as well, stating that no, mental well-being and performance have to come hands in hands, even though for many people it's very hard to grasp, because they kind of look at it like the two opposites, right?
Correct, absolutely. Mental well-being has nothing to do with performance, and I really want to understand your take on that.
Oh, actually, in my opinion, it comes hands in hands, even though the notion around the world, or even many experts, think that these are the two opposites. You know, if you have mental well-being, but then you have to forget about high performance, or you choose performance, but then you pay with the price of mental well-being and well-being in general, happiness, right? They have this notion very often, and I heavily disagree. And these examples from my life coming from my sports career, you know, which is a very high stress level when you are competing. Actually, it's even higher than any corporate job or even entrepreneurship, but it lasts for a shorter time frame, right? So there we learned about how to use certain well-being strategies, strategic recovery, or even visualization and many other techniques which can help you to recover faster and increase your performance at the same time. But since in entrepreneurship or high-level corporate jobs, many people are working 50, 60 or even more hours, right?
Absolutely.
With lesser intensity, but it's such a high amount and so long that actually there is no space for recovery, and then it's immediately becoming challenging.
Very interesting, because first of all, it was a huge surprise for me to know that you have had a very strong athlete journey as well, and not of 1 or 2 years, but of 10 years. Can you give us some of the top lessons from your sports journey as an athlete that people can today implement in the corporate life for high performance?
100%. I mean, the most important is having a training plan. I'm very blessed because my father was a coach himself, not in kickboxing though. He was in athletics, but he was actually my strength and conditioning coach.
Okay.
So I worked out with him twice a week, and then the rest of the trainings happened with my kickboxing coach, right? And everything was tracked. Even back then, it was we had no iPads and no iPhones back in these
No
days.
apps.
Exactly, everything happened online, but we had a very clear plan from where we started and where we wanted to reach. And obviously, we had the medical checkups, so a lot of things had been tracked. And I noticed that, I don't want to say commonalities, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it, from Peter Drucker. But this principle is extremely strong and coming from sports. So very often when people are, having very busy careers, I think the biggest challenge is that they are just too busy to make sure, that even 10 to 15 minutes a week can be sufficient as long as it's consistent, to make sure that they're aligned on the plan they are following. They have a very clear vision, and also that they have routines around them. As an athlete, it's so demanding. Mostly our workouts, let's say one average one lasted for 90 minutes, had various different exercises we had been doing. Obviously the sparring ones, when we did the fighting within the training, because it's almost, 80% like if you would be in the ring, it's extremely demanding, and also it's kind of like the dangerous part of it. So, you have to be very much focusing on how to strategize your resources. But of course, during the workout, you have to give your best. So, how we build up the trainings, and also we had certain exercises which became like a routine,
So,
Yeah.
here, very explicitly, you mentioned that someone needs to have a tracking mechanism to be able to take it from that and then grow it from there, because unless you know what is happening, like we say, right, the data is the most important thing. So if you don't know, if you're not able to track it, you're not able to grow. What is it that you do in your life, apart from, of course, since you are an athlete, your intention to be having a mental and a healthy being would be easy, but you are surrounded by corporates. So what's that one advice that you give them to get started, like really a practical advice which they can implement right now?
Yeah, I think the most important is when have a have a scoreboard for yourself. You
Like
know,
you are championing yourself?
yeah. I mean, what I mean is It can be a notebook. It can be you can use any software on your computer where you do your early check-ins in the morning. Where you track the most important metrics. For an athlete, it can be the number of workouts he had been completed, but it has to happen daily. For a salesperson, it can be the number of calls he proceeded with. For a marketer, it can be the new article ideas she come up with. For a finance person, it can be about any new accounting software she
So
has.
when you mentioned about there should be a scoreboard, so what could be that one parameter in this scoreboard when it comes to mental well-being?
Yeah, that's a bit more complex. That's
Okay.
more tailored to the individual itself. Because whenever we talk about mental well-being, we have different ways to achieve it. Obviously there are very common techniques like meditation, visualization, sleep. Probably the most among of all. That's the most
I don't
important.
want to say common, because maybe meditation is something we hear a lot, but visualization and sleep is something which we subtly ignore the most. It's easier to do, but it is the one thing we compromise on the most, because very easily, okay, I work all night. I was the one who used to say that I work 18 hours a day, 16 hours a day, but I knew that I'm compromising on my well-being by not giving myself that 8 hours of sleep. So it's extremely important. I would love for you to bring this to the audience.
Oh yeah, I mean, just to go back, I mean, the most fundamental one is sleep. And because not everyone is keen or interested in meditation, even though it's very beneficial, but they might not have the right environment or circumstances to do so. So it's something you need to learn, even if it's simple, but it's something you have to put in effort to. I think the lowest hanging fruit or start is always with sleep. You can't really get it wrong. There are many myths.
How many hours is David sleeping every single day?
I aim to have 7.5 to 8 hours.
And
on
it actually happens?
Average. It does happen, yes.
Ah, that's nice. And as we're talking about mental well-being, you're talking about sleep being one of the most important thing. I do know about the fact that right now you are going through a deep transition in your life. As we just spoke, you were talking about inner work that you're doing right now. What is this inner work? I'll tell you why do I ask this question, because a lot of people is not feeling right about where they are in their life at the current stage, and they also want to take a plunge, or they don't know what they're feeling at this current point of time, but they do want a break, or they do want to go through something in their life. Either of the case, because you're going through a transition, you've been working with an organization for quite a long time, and then coming out of it and waking up tomorrow and know that there's no reporting or no team, and there is no schedules and calendars. Suddenly your calendar is fully empty. So how did you make this happen for you? I mean, how did you take this decision?
Yeah, it's. I mean, obviously, everything has a time frame. You know, like how things unfolded, and you know, it can be challenging, mostly if you do something what you really like. But going back to sports, it was a very similar decision. But then it was more difficult because I was way younger, so I liked that life experience, right? I literally had times of my life, mostly when I was like 16, 17, I thought, you know, if I wouldn't do sports, there's no life without it, you know. There's even a famous brand from the Mexican boxer, Saul Alvarez. He says, no boxing, no life. That's the name of this brand, you know. I mean, I thought about no kickboxing, no life, literally, you know, because all my friends were, or most of my friends were from that community, you know. The coach I worked with since I was 12 years old, you know, and it's very scary because you lose your identity. I also had an injury when I was 17. Also, I had to move from juniors to the adult fighters. Now, it's very challenging in kickboxing when it happens because I wasn't even 18 yet when I had to make that shift. And, you know, once you were fairly successful in your age group, like the age 16, 17, and then you have to fight with 30-year-olds, you know, and it's tough because you're still a kid.
Correct,
And
correct.
you know, mostly they know that you won the junior championships. They're ready to give you a lesson in the ring. And you know, it's not like playing football or running or skating or anything like that. But okay, when someone is beating you, it means oh they are faster than you. You know, in kickboxing, it's very straightforward. You know.
So what is this transition about that you're going through? I mean, that was a phase of your life, and then came the training and development at Mind Valley. Now you are in a break mode, and in this break you're doing a lot of inner work. So what's that inner work?
Yeah, I mean, I've been meditating for almost 20 years,
Okay.
like literally half of my life, you know, like 20, 30 minutes a day on average. Now I'm taking this more seriously. So I'm going up to like even 2 hours a day. I just attended the Vipassana retreat. So that was something really amazing. And yeah, I just enjoy, you know, the last 8.5 years have been very eventful. You know, great work, meeting with great people, a lot of traveling around the world, you know, working with many great organizations. So it was extremely great to have been exposed to this. But, you know, I feel that, okay, now it's time for a transition. And now it's the time to do the inner work, to go deeper and, yeah, to make the next steps.
For someone who wants to do this inner work, for someone who wants to go through transition, what will be your advice, but is not able to do it, right? I mean, especially for that person, how would you advise that person?
Not able to do it because of
Busy schedule, life responsibility, I don't have time, I can't.
yeah, I know it can be very challenging. Just like in anything else, I would go back more. The transitioning is not just a one-time action, because actually we do change all the time, even within these seconds and minutes. Internally, we are changing. So, now it's very much happening for me, but, it's been in the making for a while, right? And I also believe that something like what's very important is to have some time alone, at least once a week. That was even in my busiest trips, and really I had very, very busy years and weeks, right? When I was like traveling to multiple countries on different continents, but always have some time with yourself to reflect, journal, to write about how it's extremely important.
Do you do journaling?
Yes. I have, like I do it on my MacBook
Okay.
for 15 years. I checked last time, I'm like around 1,300 pages or
Oh,
something like that.
wow. And again, going back, what is your advice for someone who is not able to take out that time in life but wants to take out? What would you tell that person?
Yeah, that it's not necessarily have to be a radical step,
Ah,
so that's the whole point, because going through a massive transition, it can be very demanding, and obviously you very often have questions about if it's the right thing to do, and sometimes it's not the right thing to do. That's brutally honest. Like, it's like when people talk about, oh yeah, you should fund your own business instead of an employee. Well, that sounds great if it works out, but if it doesn't,
then it's an absolute backfire.
exactly, and I'm all about entrepreneurship, and I'm all about taking risks, but very often from we just hear from certain people there are two options in your life, that either you work in a job or you become a millionaire entrepreneur, and then very often they forget there is a third option there, that you do your own stuff but it doesn't work out, and then you are way worse than if you would be having a stable position. But so that's the same thing about transitions as well, that it doesn't have to be so radical, and
It could be slow, it could be.
yes, it's reflection again, I think. And what I noticed in the last years, after working with hundreds of executives and senior managers, entrepreneurs, is that very often they just don't have those daily habits locked in, for them to do a few minutes of reflection. And I think this is something what we really owe to ourselves. Just like we wash our teeth and we don't really forget, it forms into a habit. We don't forget to eat usually. We don't forget to sleep, even though we should do more and deeper and more quality sleep. But I think at least for a few minutes a day, to get silence, even using earplug if someone don't have an access to a meditation room, and just reflect on checking in with ourselves. And of course, emotions play a role. We know this from psychology, that it's like a bit like once the ups and the downs. But for me, during long flights, what I love to do is read back my journal. Obviously I always have to, like, sometimes what I like to do is just randomly scroll, and let's say I ended up at 2013, 22nd of August, let's say, and then I read the next month of what had been happening, and I also noticed those patterns. It was very difficult, but it became easier. So it has this principle of that things are going and passing, so that's very good for stress management, because you record down your own thoughts. And also I want to say that when I mentioned I have 1,300 pages, but let's not forget that's from the last 15 years. It also tells that I don't spend too much time on journaling, right?
Absolutely, because if every single day we consider one page, then it should be way more. So it's
no,
it could be this small
less.
as well.
I can't emphasize this enough, because when people hear me, even it happened in panel discussions, or whenever I work with corporates, it was talking about meditation, or even about journaling, they were like, oh, you said you have been meditating for 20 years, so they imagine that every single day, for hours I'm meditating, and I told them that, yeah, sometimes I'm meditating on an airplane, or but it has to happen. You just should not break it. Like, for instance, today I'm meeting with you, I don't have an afternoon meditation, I only had a morning one, but I'm completely fine with it.
I think there's an absolute myth when it comes to really investing in your mental well-being, whether it is for sleep, whether it is for meditation, is there is a lot of effort that is required. I think more than effort, there's so much of intention that is required, because meditation is not about folding legs and sitting like this. It's just about sitting in a silent place and reflecting and maybe observing your breathing. That's itself is meditation, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
So how I feel it is, people have made it a very twofold feeling is what I have. Why are people not bringing it in their life is because first they feel like, I am not someone who needs it, I'm like, my life is going super great, everything is cool. Even if it is not, they're like, okay, I don't need something like this in my life. And some people who need it in their life, they always have that one statement, which is, I'm too busy to bring it in my life. And I think I love what you just mentioned. It doesn't have to be radical, it can be really a very small transition that they do it, but sustainability is the most important thing. Now, when we are coming to this, I would love for you to bring from a perspective of sports and also being in the corporate ecosystem, what is something that people are doing extremely wrong with their life right now, which is not healthy for their performance as well? Because people are more worried about the money in the bank, which comes down to performance. And performance comes down to mental well being, is yet a journey for them to travel. But I would love if you bring what is something that they're doing extremely wrong that's reducing their performance right now.
Yeah, when we talk about the mental well-being part, there is something I can say what people do extremely wrong, but I also want to defend them why they're doing it extremely wrong, because it's more about our perception, right? The challenge with the balance of performance and mental well-being is that, just as you mentioned about the bank account, performance is way easier measurable than mental well-being. Also because it can mean many things, but society has a very strong picture about achievement. So just to get what I told a few minutes ago, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it, right? So I also noticed with myself as well that the trap of performance, and mostly when it's related to money, that there's a very strong feedback mechanism there. It's simply look at your bank account, or you look at the number of likes, you look at the number of comments, you look at the number of clients. There is so many ways to manage it. We have amazing programs like Excel, Apple Numbers, Notion, Evernote, Craft Docs, you name it. So hence, it's in front of our face, and we got reminded to it. But we don't do the same with mental well-being. It's not clear to say, what the top performer is. That's very straightforward, but it's very hard to define, okay, what means that someone has optimal mental well-being. And again, when we talk about meditation, many people picture like a Buddhist monk, and but they have to wear suits all the time, so immediately they come to a conclusion that, okay, this is not for me, because it's hard to start. And also what I want to add is that small incremental change, consistency, is extremely important, but that's, I would say, works 80% of the time, majority of the time. But sometimes it's actually important and advisable, and I did notice with my clients as well and with the people I work, to have a radical shift and rather focusing on a deep immersion. That's also interesting about different personality types, right? So for instance, the Vipassana meditation is a great example, because that's a deep immersion. There is like, you go there for 11 days altogether, and for 10 days you are practicing noble silence. You are completely offline and literally just meditating the whole day.
Now, you don't talk to anyone in that?
No, not
so
for 10 days.
Literally, when you went for Vipassana, I know this one was a shorter one, but you've been to the longer one as well. For that 10, 11 days, we don't speak to ourselves, right, aloud. So literally, there is no reason for you to open your mouth also, except eating.
I think most of the people do. It's hard to completely stay silent for 10 days, right? But yeah, it's definitely true. And that's, unfortunately for most people, mostly who have families, it's a bit challenging to go to someone like that. That's why I always advise that mental well-being and working on your mental well-being toolkit, let's say, should start as soon as possible. Because of this simple reason, you don't have to do I did my Vipassana 5 years ago. Of course, we had the pandemic in between, right? And it was very difficult to do it. Again, the easier you make it for yourself to do something, the more likely it's going to happen. Now, there was the pandemic. I have been traveling a lot, but I fortunately figured out an option to do a 3-day one instead of a 10-day one. But they only have that twice a year, and that's only for the so-called old students, the one who already have
had gone.
Yeah, for Vipassana, of course, there are other techniques as well. I would kind of say that Vipassana is for me the gold standard of meditation, even though I tried many, because that's what goes the deepest among all. But again, there are many other great techniques.
Did you go through, because you're going through this inner work and transition right now, did you have any deep breakthroughs or realization in this phase, David?
Oh yeah, yeah, multiple. But of course, it's about the implementation. We talked about that. I went through an ayahuasca journey as well. That's very interesting because that's profound. Like I never really experienced anything like that, but also it's challenging. Even now, 2 months after, it's challenging to implement. Yeah, it's to process because
Really?
it's that deep. You are not 100% sure if it was the right idea. I'm mostly sure about that. I don't regret or anything like that. But then a lot of questions coming up. So again, these two ways of approaching works for certain people. Either start very slow and step by step, but for some people it just doesn't cut it. For them, it's actually necessary to have a complete turnover. And even with 10 days, it's designed in a way that it starts on Thursdays, if I'm not mistaken, so two weekends included, right? So they deliberately do it in a way that I think it's 6 or 7 working days.
So that it doesn't impact the work
doesn't
life.
impact it that much. But again, this is just one example. But there are many other techniques. People taking ice baths, and they might take for a retreat.
I've seen that as well.
Yeah, they go to a retreat or an event for 2 to 3 days, or they go to a personal development seminar for 2, 3, 4 days.
Give me a sequence, okay? Which one is, for you, of course, has worked the best in terms of transition, followed by the next and the next? Which mode or which form of activity?
I mean, for me, ayahuasca, definitely the number.
Okay, so number one is ayahuasca.
Yes. Then comes meditation.
Which is Vipassana or just the meditation?
Let's call it generally meditation.
Meditation, okay.
Yes,
and then?
yes. And then I really believe in events, in more advanced personal development events, because there is not just about the experience, it's about the people you are meeting. That's something extremely powerful. Because I wasn't alone at the ayahuasca, but it's more like a personal experience. The same about the meditation or Vipassana. There were other people, but most of the time you're not even able to talk with them.
Correct.
So for me specifically, these worked the best.
So like, for example, where we met, which was the event Awaken done by Dev, that is something which was, for me, I went through a lot of breakthrough moments as well. Did you go through breakthrough?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it was multiple ones during those 3 days.
So if you are comfortable in this whole period of time when you were experiencing ayahuasca, Vipassana, meditation, or the event that Awaken that we went for and stuff, any breakthrough that you are comfortable sharing with us?
It's more like knowing myself more deeply.
Okay.
Because each of these events had give you a unique opportunity to get to know yourself way better. And also traveling can be very powerful, very transformational. And for all of these experiences included traveling as well. Yeah.
What is the purpose of knowing oneself? Why do I need to know myself? Because every time because I'm working in the space where it's about personal branding, where it's about creating a voice in the world and stuff, but there are people who also believe in the fact that why would someone even be interested in me? Same way, why do I need to know myself also? What is the purpose of me finding out myself? Why do you think someone needs that?
Oh yeah, I think it's one of the main pillars of our well-being, our personal mental well-being. Know thyself. I mean, so many philosophies, we're going to India, China, thousands of years had been discussed. And the more you know yourself, the more authentic you can be. I mean, there are numerous studies about that. It's also obviously good and nice to say that you should be authentic. But, there are very interesting psychological studies, research done around that. How crucially important is it? And, when we talk about the work of Carl Jung, one of the most prominent psychologists who ever lived, and he has this process called individuation.
Okay.
When you bring together your conscious and your subconscious, that's exactly about knowing yourself better. That's what ayahuasca serves, that you go in way deeper layers to explore your psyche. Now, that can be very challenging because certain things might be suppressed so deep down that it's even shocking to us, to face with it. Because when I had ayahuasca, but you don't even need ayahuasca. You need to have a certain trauma in your life or
Correct.
difficulty. You go
Self-limiting beliefs and stuff.
exactly, but further on the aspect of that, you go through a challenging period, let's say,
Right.
and then certain feelings are coming up, which you say, oh, this is something very foreign to me. At the same time, after certain time is passing, you realize that no, not at all. This is somewhere I had been, but very long time ago, and it got either disowned or repressed. But deep down, it's there, and of course, it's creating conflicts, right? So literally, what Jung stated is that in order to be psychologically healthy, which is literally the same like talking about mental well-being, is to bring these conscious and subconscious elements together, and that's when we become whole. What is being suppressed should not be ignored, because that's the problem. That's the source of the program. That's where everything started.
Wow.
Instead, it must be integrated. Our shadows, our disowned qualities, and this is so visibly with you, so practically. You can see it in the world. When people are having negative opinions about someone else, or we all do that, but it is very often our own shadows which we see in our people, but we don't want to acknowledge it. But that's why we get so charged about it.
Wow.
Because it is hidden. We don't want to take it, and that creates that conflict. And actually, even Jung went very deeply when his second part of his life. That's when communism approached. That's when the Nazism in Europe started to spread. And it's interesting how he said that witch hunting and things were happened, which ended up with the death of tens of millions of people, were all about these collective shadows, these collective disowned materials which came up to the surface. Obviously, this is also fairly philosophical as well, right? But his work is rather on the sphere of psychology and philosophy. But we do see it. I did see this a lot in working with these companies all over the world, and also on more on an individual level. To know yourself is probably one of the most important elements of mental well. I can't imagine mental well-being without this, to be honest.
Anything one should do to know themselves?
Going back, it's a lifelong process. So as Jung said about individuation, it's something where perfectionism has to be avoided, because it's never, it's again challenging, because it's not like money, that you say, okay, I want to have X a month, and if I reach, I can tick it off. But by the way, never tick it off. We always want to get to the next one, to the next one. Here it's a bit more challenging, but I think again, self-reflection, journaling, those habits, and also these are even more important when the tough times are coming, because that's when we really know our true selves. And this same thing happened with me. I had like a 4 or 5 year period of my life when everything was just great. I was moving up in multiple dimensions of my life, and I thought, oh, okay, I already passed these stages. Why to worry about? I have a lot of endorphins, oxytocin in your system, because you get this reinforcement, and it is created this momentum, which is extremely powerful from the side of performance.
Correct.
But when the more challenging days are coming, we very often just start to be stressing and just going down that little bit. It's even way faster to go down than on the way going upwards, with the momentum. So that's why I say that having those habits of journaling during good times and stick them is extremely important. It's just like, like anything else about your health. You don't just want to end up in the hospital and say, oh, I should have been healthy, right?
Correct.
That's too late for that, probably. And this is the same thing with mental well-being, is that don't forget, you have to have that, going back to Vipassana, that certain amount of equanimity around things, that good things are not necessarily as good as you think, but bad things are neither. And, obviously it's extremely difficult to reach a stage what is being taught there, that you reach this complete equanimity. Now that would need tens of thousands of hours of meditation, right? And also you have to start in a certain time. But just like with sports, not everyone has to be a top athlete. You can do sports for your own health, but again, the sooner you start, the better. But you have to define your next steps. You have to define with specific actions, with specific part of the day when you are going to do it, Otherwise, it's going to fall apart.
Fall apart. I mean, after a few days, you're just not going to continue. I think, and there is a very beautiful aspect of course, knowing oneself. For me, I never even knew that this was a concept about 2-3 years ago, that okay, I must invest in knowing myself, because that's a waste of time. I rather focus on growing my company, and that's where the most energy is. And I do meet people right now who are in the similar state, and they're like, okay, I need to hustle, I need to make the best of my hour. Knowing myself is okay, never mind, I know it. So there is a strong denial or defense to the whole concept of mental well-being, or the whole concept of knowing oneself, or not only being authentic, but also to be able to get to a point where I exactly know I'm not ready for this. I exactly know this is how I want it. I exactly know this is an emotion I can manage, this is an emotion I cannot manage. And that's what I have realized with my own discovery of inner voice journey, that yeah, I'm aware, I'm conscious about what I'm doing in and around myself. But as you mentioned, David, which is perfection about destroys, I mean, you mentioned perfection. So for me, I always mention this in my inner tribe: perfection delays success. This is like a very key message that and I was like, oh damn, this relates with me deeply. I want to go back, and I don't know how to motivate these people and how to remove their denials and defenses, but I would love to know, do you know something that can help them to at least have an inner acceptance, and maybe a public denial if it takes too much for them to accept publicly, that they need to have that inner work done, which is on themselves, whether it's through journaling, meditation, or whatever be the case? What could be something that you would suggest
As a starting point.
as people who are in denial?
I mean, that's very tough. But if someone's in denial, I mean, usually what happens, and what I notice, that when people are, even myself, are in denial, it's just that they haven't been pressured enough to do so, the inner work. You know, that's what I say.
I think when you say pressure, it is not an external pressure, it's the life pressure, like
Exactly.
incidentally something happening,
Yes.
and then you go through that, right?
Yes. Again, you know, there is ignorance around it. Obviously, when things going well, it's very hard to tell to someone to do something difficult when things are going well.
Correct.
Even though I learned about this and I studied, even for me, it was challenging, right? But the most important part in the end of the day is that you just have to have that awareness around it, because sooner or later it's coming, and you don't know when. And you know, it's better to be prepared, and you know, to go deeper, and it's difficult. So let's be brutally honest, and that's why I said during, for instance, ayahuasca, is very challenging, because what you see there is not always pleasant. And you know, mostly if someone has a strong image and confidence, which does happen in sports and leadership, and you know, at top level where people are playing, the more difficult for them to accept, you know,
Because they have a lot of self reputation to maintain in front of their own eyes, and it is difficult to see the weaker version, or the version where they went wrong somewhere, or they have done something which is not right. I think that is very, very challenging for anyone to go through. Very beautiful, David. I think everything that we spoke about right now is touching so many different aspects. But now that we're almost getting towards the end of it, I think I would love for you to share with me one final thing, which is mental well-being and performance plays a very incredible role. I have seen that I've been performing a lot, and I didn't feel a single day moving, but with giving to a point where my mental well-being is getting better, I have been through depression. So I have felt that transition very strongly in my own journey. I want you to maybe give 3 quick pointers on day-to-day life, especially for someone who is in the corporate space. How can they get started to be a high performer in their life?
in their life, so
In
not
their-
in their work, but in their life.
In their life and work both. Because when I say life, I really mean that, because active 10 hours goes in the work only. So yeah, both
Yeah,
ways.
definitely. Always start with the vision.
Okay.
Where you want to end up. That's the most important. The second part is when we talk about life and work-life integration, this is a topic I
Correct.
have been talking a lot about. I don't really believe in work-life balance, more like integration. For someone who is playing in a very high level, you have to find the common areas between your life and work and then play around it. You can't just separate it because it's two big chunks, and then literally that you don't have the energy. Like really, how can you bring together? And again, that's why going back to know yourself, right? It's you have to know your strength and you have to know your weaknesses, and that's how you can form that what's called training plan. Right? This is something I've been using a lot in my work that's coming from my sports career. This is something I've been doing for 25 years overall right now. Is that you need to have very clear picture about, okay, that is my work, that is my life, and find the intersections in between.
Okay.
Because that's tremendous amount to create leverage. It's very difficult if you completely separate the two. It's just, in the end of the day, we all have 24 hours. We also know that we need a certain amount of sleep. There are very few people who can do it with less, but 95% of the people would need at least 7 hours a day.
Right.
We know that. So again, that's why finding those intersections is very important. So the clarity, that you have the vision, then you really map out both areas of your life and finding the intersections which you can work together and create leverage.
Right.
And then the third one is obviously consistency. Because always long-term consistency beats intensity, even though today in our world in social media it's kind of been shown differently, but without that it just can't move anywhere.
Interesting. I think that's so beautifully mentioned because where we fall out is consistency. I think the first two still we hear from some places and we implement it, but where exactly the most difficult part is, can we make it happen every single day of our life or not? That's the question. Not of a month, not of a year, but it's of life every single day. So with this, David, as we're going to wrap it up, I'm going to play a quick game with you. Okay? So the game is going to be what comes to your mind, which is top of the mind recall.
Okay.
So whatever I'm going to say, that one word, you're going to immediately tell me what's coming to your mind with that word. No thinking. Okay? It's just going to be super fast. Okay? Shall we do it?
Challenge yourself, please.
Okay, what comes to your mind when I say love?
Most important thing,
Life,
bliss,
passion,
important,
purple,
purpose,
purple,
The
color purple,
nice,
white,
purity,
money,
important,
poverty,
sad,
COVID,
lockdown,
purpose,
important.
travel. You can't have important again.
Okay, I can't have, okay.
Purpose,
Crucial,
beach,
sand,
transformation,
growth,
vipassana,
equanimity,
training,
strength,
transition,
purpose,
kickboxing,
power,
Hungary,
home,
Malaysia,
adventure,
last but not the least, David.
Oh, now that's the most difficult one. Phew.
You can't think so long.
I know, but you tricked me with this one.
What comes to your mind when I say David?
Myself, obviously. This is
No.
not what you want to hear, obviously. The challenge was to tell what's coming to my mind. I mean, that's what came immediately to my mind.
Okay. We gotta try one more time and see what comes this time. Okay. What comes to your mind when I say David?
Peace.
Okay, I like that. I really like that. Okay, superb, David. It was lovely having you, and I think I love the part where you spoke about how exactly people are genuinely in denials and defenses, but they are also, if they are conscious about it and they're aware about it, they can come out of that as well. Definitely, my favorite part was where you mentioned perfection and the success aspect, which delays success. Thank you so much for being with us on the show. I hope you loved it.
Oh yeah, thank you for having me.
Same here. All right, then. This was David with us from Malaysia, born in Hungary, right? Absolutely. And have traveled more than 60 countries?
Yes.
Yes, traveled more than 60 countries. So get in touch with him if you have anything to do with wanting to go through transition in life and can't, somewhere stuck in mental peace and not able to achieve it, and work is not going that well, then surely his insights will play a very important role in your life and journey. Till then, thank you so much for signing in. I'm going to see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.